I can't wait for you to meet Rynda Laurel. She's a woman who lives in Joshua Tree, California, and she's developed an entire supplement line for people in recovery. I'm not somebody who pushes products. I don't make money on any of this. I want you to know that I'm also somebody that does not take any medication, never has, and I'm not either pro or against taking prescription medication. But this is something, her supplement line is holistic, it's all natural, and it's something that might interest you if you're somebody in early sobriety or in recovery and you're thinking, I'm just not feeling as well as I want to feel. There might be something here for you. I also wanted her to go deep into her story of addiction to crystal meth, cocaine, alcohol, and heroin. And she also shares her rock bottom moment and then what took her to her new life now and how she's been thriving for 25 years in recovery. So let's get started. Here we go with Rynda Laurel.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people. People who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
Welcome, Rynda Laurel. I have never met another Rynda before. I'm so happy that you're here. And we are going to talk about your new supplement line because this is something that a lot of people are wondering about. You know, do I need to take things when I get sober? Is there something that I can help my recovery along with? Are there products out there that are not just garbage? What can I do? And so I was turned on to you by one of our own, Laura Silverman, and
Yep.
she had interviewed you and she suggested that you and I connect. So I'm really glad we did because as you know, you and I talked before we started recording, I'm somebody who got sober using health and wellness, and I pretty much try to eat my vitamins, meaning through food, and I like to move my body rather than take antidepressants. And I'm not somebody that's been prescribed antidepressants, so I'm not trying to downplay the importance of medication. Sometimes they come into play and are absolutely necessary and life-saving. But I loved your story when I read it because you have a lot of expertise in this area. And so I want to dig right in, right out of the gate on your VRY Everyday supplement line and how it came to be and who it's for. So welcome, Rynda.
Thank you so much. I love that you just get right in there.
Yep.
First of all, let me just start by saying I absolutely agree with you 100%. There is not one answer. So I really think that, no, taking supplements by themselves is not the answer. Just working out 80 times a day is not the answer. Eating well is the answer, but sometimes you can't get all the nutrients or the specific things that you need from eating. So, and then again, just sitting at home alone, taking vitamins and exercising without any communication or connection with your peers or other struggling alcoholics and addicts or depression or whatever, sort of community thing, that's not the answer. What I found though, is most people aren't talking about the area that you and I are very interested in, which is the physical aspects. There's lots of opportunities out there for people in recovery for the community aspect and the spiritual aspect. And there's starting to be a little bit more movement with the yoga. And nobody is really, really, really out there talking about, well, that's great. You're going to go to 12 meetings a day, but you're still going to eat a bunch of sugar and donuts and you're going to still be miserable. And that was sort of something I observed and also something I experienced.
All right. So you created the VRY Everyday and it's spelled VRY Everyday. Tell us why the name and tell us what is entailed with all of these. I know there are 5 different products that you created. I think it's amazing that you living in, Joshua Tree, California, you're a woman who just decided to create this supplement line. And I think it's really amazing because yes, of course, it's rooted in your own experience, but tell us about the supplements themselves.
Okay. So VRY Everyday was a name. It actually came to me in the shower. I do a lot of my thinking in the shower. I don't know why. Maybe the naked water. I don't know. And the name VRY, VRY, it's sort of a play on recovery. It's got VRY in it. And then I was like, well, what does that mean? And then I looked at VRY online and VRY was a little complicated. Social wasn't available. And I was like, well, what's that second word? And, I went through the just for todays and that kind of concepting. And I thought, it's every day. You need something every day. You need to be on point every day. So it's sort of a play on words of one day at a time. And, that's where it came together.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I started researching, we'll go into it with my story later, but I started researching all about nutrition and holistic remedies a good 10, 12 years ago through my own story of not feeling very good. A couple of years ago, I specifically used supplements to get off antidepressants. And the one that I used was the Mucona. I hope I'm saying it correctly. Mucona pruriens.
That's the way I've heard it spoken of. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I did is through all my research, I went like, this was the one antidepressant that really helped with my depression. And so what is that doing for me? And how can I replace that with something natural? And that's what I did. And that's sort of what these are all based on. So even though I'm not a doctor, I absolutely do not, I think medications are important for a lot of people. I personally think they're overprescribed. I think had I known about the natural way to do it first, I would have done it, and I would have saved myself a lot of time and probably a lot of turmoil, because normal antidepressants didn't work for me. Prozac did not work for me. Wellbutrin did, and then I was like, how do I replace it? So each one of my supplements has sort of a counterparty in the pharmaceutical world. So for example, the pink cloud works on the serotonin in your brain, which is a counter to an SSRI. So my idea is that if someone wants to try that first, if they're in such a horrible way, suicidal or any of those things, like,
Yeah, I think
this is serious stuff. I mean, I definitely don't want to say like, oh, try my supplements, it'll cure everything. That's not what I'm about. Yeah. But I know that it helps. There are also natural foods that you can eat to supplement serotonin as well. So the dopamine that I created was the one that helped me. It's straight L-Dopa, and it helped me get off the Wellbutrin. And it really works. I've found people using it that have process addictions or cigarette addictions. They're finding that really helpful. And that sort of depression where you cannot get out of bed, not anxiety ridden depression, but you're just so like, for me, I just had like this core of like, ugh.
So does it boost dopamine? Is that how it works?
It boosts dopamine. So again, not a doctor, but here's how I'm going to do it. The neurotransmitters in your brain, right? Here's the one neurotransmitter, and here's the one neuropathway, and here's the other one. And the neurotransmitters are in the middle. In the idea of pharmacology, I think the medications, at least the SSRIs and some of the others, actually block the little neurotransmitters are in the middle. And then the medications actually block the uptake of that. So it's actually, I call it breaking your brain, which isn't very nice, but it's actually breaking your brain. It's stopping the functioning of your brain. So you have serotonin or norepinephrine, et cetera, in there. It's sitting in there. The medications stop the uptake. So eventually your body goes, well, I don't really need to create more because it's stopping the uptake. And so it stays in there. And so it never really gives a solution. And that is my, non-PhD version of it. So what supplements and eating proper foods and building those is, the idea is, let's build those chemicals in the first place and not stop them from moving along. Let's build more serotonin. Let's build more dopamine. Let's build more of those. And you can do like Q&As that sort of figure out which ones you're lacking. So
pink cloud is about serotonin. And then, okay, cool. Wait, let's go back to, because the camera wasn't on you. Hang on. Say something right now so the camera jumps to you.
Pink cloud is on serotonin. Dopamine is for dopamine. Serenity, you see it? It's a little washed out. Serenity works on the GABA, and it's more for GABA and serotonin, but GABA is like that stressed out anxiety that's physical. So you want to feel serene. Each one of them sort of have this like feel relaxed, feel calm, feel happy. So it's sort of the opposite of if you're feeling like anxious and crazy, like they're sort of the opposite.
And is there before you keep going, is there a specific way to take them? So you just mentioned feel happy, feel serene. Like if I'm feeling unhappy, do I take the pink cloud and then I'm going to feel better? Or is there a specific way that you recommend taking them?
So, okay, first of all, for bio-individuality, I had to practice to say that a million times. It's different for everybody. I find that if you're dealing with long-term depression, pink cloud, serenity, and dopamine, if you take those, it's some people have it like I took it and 2 weeks later I felt completely different. I've had, a musician friend of mine, he's on pink cloud for 2 weeks. He calls me, he's like, my life's completely different. I've had other people that are like, well, it's taking a little while. And I was like, take it for 30 days and see what happens. It's not a quick fix. Like they're not drugs. They're not like that. However, I have another friend that we've been opening the dopamine because it's an herb. So we've been opening dopamine and glutamine and putting them in our smoothies in the morning. And like this morning, I did it twice in the morning. I'm like, I feel great and energized and happy. Again, not like a drug because that's defeating the whole purpose. Supplement.
Can people be taking them while also taking prescribed medication? And certainly they would have to talk to their doctor, but do you have cases of people taking both?
I have cases with people taking both. I absolutely recommend they talk to their doctor about it. Pink cloud has St. John's wort in it, which sort of can, mess with other things.
Antidepressants.
Yeah. And I have people that are lowering their medications like I did and are trying that. And my strong recommendation for anybody that wants to do that, talk to your doctor first, of course.
Yeah.
Tell at least 5 people that are close to you that that's what you're doing so they can monitor you. Because if you crash, someone has to be able to say, get back on your meds. And that's what I did. I made sure that like 5 people knew. I was like, I'm doing this. So if I call you in 2 weeks and I can't get off the couch, like, tell me, don't forget for me, I didn't crash, which was a miracle. And I've been clinically depression free for 2.5, 3 years, according to my doctor. Like it's on my little chart and everything. So
congratulations.
Thanks.
Keep going with the 4th one.
Let's see. Oh, the 4th one is called Rest Well. And I didn't really need this, but so many people I talked to when I was developing this was like, I have anxiety, I can't sleep. So I developed Rest Well. It's got valerian root in it, hops, passion flower, all calming your body and your brain. Because a lot of people that can't sleep, there's different reasons why people can't sleep. One of them is just their whole body is tense. And then the other one is their brains just spin.
So you mentioned anxiety and poor sleep. Can I take this during the day to quell anxiety and then in the evening to put me to sleep? Is it kind of like, is there any ashwagandha in there? I'm a big fan of ashwagandha. It's an adaptogenic herb.
Oh yeah, I know what it is.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember if I have that in there. I can look, but I don't have my glasses. Anyway,
but so can we take it for anti-anxiety during the daytime and then also, like, is that how you would recommend it? If people need it at nighttime to sleep, they take it at night, or do we take it during the day? And again, is it different for everybody? Everyone takes it at a different time. Like, how does it work?
So it's different for everybody. So I take dopamine and glutamine, which we haven't gotten to, in the morning. When I need it, if I'm under a lot of stress and I haven't been able to sleep, whatever, I'll take Rest Well at night. Rest Well is take as needed.
Okay.
Like you take it at night, it's as needed. I have people that are taking dopamine in the morning to sort of get them like awake and moving. They have multiple disorders. And so then they're taking pink cloud in the afternoon because it works on the serotonin. And serotonin, if you have enough of it, converts to melatonin and allows you to sleep. So I have different people are on different combinations. I'm working on a quiz for my website that can kind of take you through what you might need. But it's just me here. So I'll get to the quiz as soon as I can.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I'm loving what I'm hearing. So it's sounding really customized. And so what I think I thought originally is that it's a system of 5 supplements, but now what I'm getting from you is you don't necessarily need to get all 5 of them. If you only need.
No. And I don't want you on all of them all together for your whole life either. The complete opposite. I mean, I think there are 4 things that everybody should take, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I took the dopamine for 6 months after I got Wellbutrin because I needed the dopamine. And then I started Pink Cloud because then I wanted to balance out the serotonin. So,
and how did you uncover all of these things within yourself? Like, how did you know you needed more dopamine? How did you know you needed serotonin? Like, how do we know if we're sitting here thinking, I don't feel great, I'm not happy in my life, I'm feeling underproductive, but I don't know what I need to do? How would we know? What are some indicators?
Well, I would educate yourself. I mean, I read 1,000 trillion books, so you don't have to. I do have a lot of information on my website. It might not be detailed enough. You might need to go a little bit further. I have a book reference on my website of all the books I read to get to this point. So you can read a handful of them. The Mood Cure by Julia Ross is incredible. That helped a lot and informed a lot of my supplements. And actually, you fast forward, and now I'm on the board for Alliance of Addiction Solutions, which was founded by Julia Ross, which is just a twist of events.
Isn't that amazing how things come full circle?
Yeah, exactly. 7 Weeks of Sobriety by Joan Matthews Larson is pretty great. So, I mean, I think part of it is really educating yourself, and you've got to do a little bit of the work. It's like, all right, I don't feel good still. What is it? Look, if you've been sober for a little bit, like me, I was, and you're doing all the other kind of work and you're still feeling bad, you might have a brain chemical imbalance, or you might not have enough thyroid, there are other biochemical reasons that you might not be feeling good. So, talk to a health practitioner or a health coach or a doctor, and educate yourself.
Or a naturopath or a holistic practitioner for sure. So let's see the last one as well. Sorry, say what you want to say, but I also want to see the glutamine.
I was going to say sugar is a big issue too, as you well know. I keep looking down over there because that's where you are. I'll stop that. Glutamine is the last one. It's just straight glutamine. But it's a really great energy source. And the reason I decided to go with this one is it is well known in a lot of circles that can help with hypoglycemia and sugar cravings.
Yeah.
And sugar cravings and alcohol cravings. So what I do is I take it like I took one about a half an hour before I was about to get in here. So in case my sugar dropped. When your sugar levels drop, you crave sugar, and you're the expert on this, better than me. And that can also therefore lead you to wanting to crave alcohol or other drugs to make yourself feel better. Most of the research I did said that alcoholics and addicts had some hypoglycemia and sugar problems. So this is one of my quick fix solutions on that. If you're going to meetings and you all of a sudden have, instead of grabbing that, donut, you can take the capsules apart and even put it right under your tongue, and literally that craving goes away.
It works really well that way. I was going to say breaking up the capsule and just putting it right under your tongue is one of the fastest ways to get rid of a sugar craving. And so, my story is that I transferred my addiction from alcohol to sugar, and I didn't use glutamine when I first got sober. It was just not something that I used in my toolbox. For me, it was all about using food and nutrition. But I'm really opening my mind up to the idea that there are some really powerful supplements. Jolene Park was interviewed for this series as well. And she's big on the neurotransmitters and the different ways that we can nourish our brains in order to recover in a much healthier way. So I think she'd be supportive of a lot of what you're doing as well. So I'm loving it. So let's keep going and let's talk about, so first of all, where can people find these supplements? Where can they buy them? Where can they learn more?
Just go to VRYEveryday.com. It's VRYEveryday.com. If you can't remember that, I made it easy. It's VRY.store. Either one leads there. On that website, you'll find some information about the different neurotransmitters. I'm just building it. I'm going to make it more robust. You have a link to the Alliance for Addiction Solutions, which has a ton of information. That is a great resource for this type of information. It has a link to another website I'm building called Supplement Your Recovery, which is going to be a hub for holistic pathways for recovery. That's just starting out. And we've started a Facebook group. If you want to learn more, you can join that, and we'll start having chats and stuff there as well.
Fantastic. So people can friend you or find you on Facebook, and then you can allow them into your private group.
Absolutely. There's actually a link right from the VRY Everyday website that says Supplement Your Recovery Facebook group, and it should link right there.
I love that. Supplement your recovery, because it's so true. It isn't just a one size fits all, and it's not just a one tool fits all. And sometimes the one tool that we use early on in our recovery is not something that we use later on in our recovery. I tell people all the time, when I first got sober, that first day of not drinking, I chugged back probably 8 non-alcoholic beers, and they were the 0%. So I don't want to have people emailing me and messaging me saying they're not alcohol free. They were. I drank Beck's. That was the only one that I've ever had. And I needed that. I needed the habit of that. I needed the ritual of that. I pretended it was Corona. That was the beer I was drinking towards the end of my drinking career. And I put the lime in there. I cracked the cap open. And for me, it helped me so tremendously in those shaky early days and weeks where I did not know how I was supposed to get through a day without drinking alcohol. So for me, it was like the fake way of doing it. Like it eased me into it. And for me, it worked, but only for a few months. Like I haven't had a non-alcoholic beer in years. It just isn't something that I bother with. I would, but it's just not something I care about anymore. But in those early days, it was absolutely crucial for me to make sure that on my, knowing that I had them in the fridge at home. Like it was in the same way that I needed alcohol before, but I needed to have that as a tool for me. So the point here is just that sometimes there are tools that we use for a short time and others that we use for a long time. And sometimes medication needs to be used for a short time. I love that you talk about that. Sometimes, oftentimes people are on medication for a lot longer than maybe is beneficial for them. And I am not somebody who has ever been on any type of prescribed medication. So I am not speaking here with experience, but other than what I've had with the people that I'm connected to, and I'm connected to hundreds and thousands now of people in sobriety that have shared that they have struggled when they have been prescribed with medications, going up and down and just not feeling great and never really feeling like they're where they want to be. And then feeling like there's shame and judgment for taking them, and then there's shame and judgment for not. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So I think that the key here, the message for sure, is that everybody's recovery is individual. Everybody's pathway is going to be unique, but this whole project is about exposing people to all of the different options that are out there, and taking natural supplements is one way that might really help you to enhance your recovery journey. So that's what we're talking about today. So Rynda, I would love for you to go back in your story because it's pretty amazing. I want to hear about how you grew up and your childhood, and then your amazing music career that you had for over 2 decades. And then it will kind of bring us full circle to when you hit your rock bottom and moved into recovery, and then to where you are today. So I'm going to pass the microphone over to you.
Pass the mic. Yep. Okay. I'm going to go with that, but I am in Joshua Tree. And just so you know, while you were speaking, I was listening to you, of course, but I also just saw a cute little bunny pass by, and then all these little squirrels and these little things. And I was just like, all the animals are watching our little thing right now, which is
it's springtime. It's spring right now. I mean, you're in California, so it's always kind of sunny and nice, but where I live in Ottawa, Canada, it is just starting to be spring. The first day of spring was yesterday, so that's when we're recording this, the 21st of March. But I love that the bunnies and the birds are all supporting.
So I was like, wait, there's bunny. Okay, let me back up a little bit. Well, speaking of California, I was born in California. I was born 9 months after the Summer of Love in San Francisco. So hence maybe the name Rynda. I was thinking about it a lot. It was a really there was a lot of turmoil in the world in 1968. You know, there was just a lot of turmoil, and then there was also the Summer of Love. So it was sort of this like back and forth dichotomy. I have a story that I like to tell because I think it's funny that my mom, who was very young, went to the Fillmore and saw the Doors while she was pregnant with me, which I always like to say catapulted me into a lifelong music career. But I don't know, I just think that's funny. I was, my mom was the second oldest of 7 children, and then there was me, and I was an only child for 9 years. So I sort of hung out with the adults a lot, but I wasn't quite an adult. And then my mom and my dad, who raised me, who's been with me since I was 4, had 3 more children in a row. So technically they're half, but I don't really consider that. But by the time they were born, which was 9 and a half, and then they had 3 in a row. So I had 3 siblings in a row. I became a mini little adult. So I either hung out with the adults, but I didn't feel like them. And then there was children, all these children. And so like by 10, 11, 12, in my early tween years, I was already like changing diapers, and I already felt really like an adult. And what I learned about that in retrospect, even in the last handful of years, is how that, you know, caused me to sort of shut down certain emotions and not, you know, sort of be a constant self-parenting almost in a way. Even though they were there, you know, they were there and we were a family unit, there was a lot of chaos in my outside of my family, or in my not my core family. So that by the time I was a teenager, we did have a nice core group, wonderful family, but there still was a lot of chaos around me. And also what I learned in recovery is that I absorbed a lot of that chaos. And even though that chaos wasn't mine, and I didn't experience certain traumas, I absorbed a lot of it because it was going around me and my family. So it took me a long time in recovery to sort of figure that out. By the time I got into being a teenager, we had moved to Southern California, and we had moved out sort of in the outskirts. I moved around a lot too when I was little, because they were young parents. So I'm able to make friends really quickly, but not strong bonding, lasting relationships. So I can go into different groups. I still do that. I think a lot of these things I'm talking about, I can use as strengths or weaknesses.
I totally relate to that. I moved around a lot as a kid as well. And that's exactly how I describe my feelings about it, that I can easily step into any situation, quickly put people at ease. It's usually about them, not me. I'm always trying to make people feel comfortable and good. And it was always just me being able to kind of fit in wherever I needed to. And it wasn't about fulfilling my own needs. It was typically just kind of doing what needed to be done. I guess for survival in a way. When you're a kid moving around a lot, it's just always trying to not be that outcast, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you know, these are things that I have pluses and minuses, you know, because I find it hard to make really strong relationships, but on the other hand, I know tons of people all over the world, and I know all these different, you know, I know the tech people and the music people and the blah, blah. And so on the other hand, that's really great. And then as far as like being a little adult, you know, it's bode very well for me as a music manager and as an A&R person, as like championing, I said that wrong, but helping other people's, you know, visions and dreams and careers, those things in childhood I actually use to my advantage, and I'm okay with a lot of that. There are the negatives parts of that, is not understanding your emotions, people pleasing, managing other people's lives and not your own. So yeah. And again, I learned all this in retrospect. It's not like I woke up, or, you know, I realized that when you know, it took me a long time in recovery to uncover some of these things. Yeah. As a teenager, though, let's go back to that. I felt like I think most teenagers do. I felt insecure and sort of not in my own skin, and not understand what was going on in school and all that kind of stuff. And I think I don't know a kid that doesn't feel that way. I just think that my solution pretty early, by 16, 17 was, if I drink, that will give me courage, and that fear will go away. So that courage at the bottom of the bottle saying is actually really true. I think
so alcohol was your first drug?
Yes, absolutely. Alcohol was my first drug, from about 14 to about 16. What I would consider somewhat normal dabbling, but maybe not. I mean, you know, I got away with a lot because there were lots, again, the chaos in the family. I would sneak out a lot, and I would go to parties and drink a lot, but there were what's interesting with my whole story is I didn't have a lot of outside consequences. Most of the repercussions were really internal. I mean, that's not true. I did get suspended from high school for taking alcohol to school. Forgot about that.
And it's funny when you were saying, you know, you felt like it was sort of normal dabbling. And I totally get that. I mean, I started drinking when I was 15. That was the first time I had a drink. And yet now when I think about it, especially I have a niece and a nephew, my niece just turned 13. And to think about her in a year or two dabbling in alcohol, it's like, no, I don't want that in your brain. I mean, I don't want that in your body at all. I don't want you even thinking that it's something that's going to enhance your life in any way. I mean, and all of what we know about the way that it affects the frontal lobe and and our reward centers of the brain. And I think it's interesting that both you and I can sit there and say, like, I feel like my drinking was kind of normal because that's what kids were doing then. But you know, God, we got to change this because it's not normal. It's not what should be going on with children, with babies, 13 and 14. And I mean, as young as 8 and 9 and 10, I've been interviewing lots of people, and the age gets younger and younger. I feel like it's incredible.
Yeah, you're right. I don't want to underplay it. My niece turns 15 today. I'm going to call her after we talk, and I would be devastated if I knew that she was doing what I was already doing it. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But I think it's just interesting. Like we can talk about it that way, right? Like that's just kind of how it feels. And especially in retrospect, being able to look back and we can point to things and of course we've come so far in our lives that it's just something that we're now able to talk about. But I do think that it's fascinating that we can often look at 14 and 15 years old as normal dabbling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've been sober long enough, you hear all these other crazy stories, and that's why it minimalizes it, because you're like, oh, my friend was a junkie at 14. You're like, oh, well, I was just drinking Boone's Farm. So, you know, I mean, it's all relative, but yeah, you know.
But so how did it progress so you're 14 and 15, you're drinking, you're at school, you get caught for bringing booze in, and then how does it progress?
Well, so I was already really super involved, and I loved music. I hung out with all the music thing. We did another move. We did another geographic, which was fine with me. We landed in Fullerton, which was where I consider my hometown. We landed there, and I met a bunch of people in the music business, and was going to high school and discovered, spent a lot of time. I joke in my story about, you know, I hung out with Jack and Jim and crystal methamphetamine, but you know, I did. I don't, at this point, I can't remember. I started working for a booking agent really early, and there was coke and crystal meth around me, and I just went there. I actually am trying to think. I don't remember the first time I did it. It wasn't like this miracle, you know, but I remember really, really, really liking it, because what it did for me is it gave me the confidence I had been lacking that whole time prior.
Are you talking about cocaine or meth?
Both.
Okay. Yep.
Both, really. They were sort of interchangeable for me for a while. I did a lot of both of them between the ages of like 16 and 21. Wow. Maybe 18 and 21.
It's funny because Amy Dresner, she's the author of My Fair Junkie, and she was on here talking about crystal meth and her dentist saying, how do you not even have a single cavity, let alone all of your beautiful teeth? And you appear to have all of your teeth. How does that happen with excessive crystal meth users? Like how, anyway, maybe don't even, yeah.
Well, first of all, I think it takes years, and I think that they're probably I think the much like Amy, I watched a little bit of her interview with you. Much like Amy, I probably have the holes in my brain instead of my teeth, and so I do think that, if you want to go back to the supplements and the nourishing your brain, if you're doing that kind of stuff, it messes with your brain chemicals. There's no getting around it. It just does. All the substances mess with your body and your brain chemistry. So you have to address that when you get sober. I did a lot of that. I have stupid, crazy stories. I'm really lucky nothing ever happened to me. I graduated high school. I was working, I started my music business career started with working for a booking agent. I was only 18, and we booked all the clubs up along the Sunset Strip during the like rock and roll hair metal heyday. So I lived in the middle of that like rock and roll thing at 18.
Wow.
So, drinking and drugging were really normal part of the lifestyle. And
almost, I imagine, if you weren't drinking and drugging, like that wouldn't have been cool to be working in the industry. I imagine anyway. I was so young when I started that it was just my life. It was just just my life. So I wouldn't even have ever thought, there were times when look, all through this whole time period, I went through stages of like, okay, I'm going to quit doing drugs for a while and just drink, and then I would drink. I was sort of a Russian roulette drunk. So sometimes I would drink and I'd be fine and have a great time. And other times I would be, in the bathroom crying because of something, because it was a very emotional turmoil time, which we'll talk about. And then other times it'd be, getting sick or like, I just never knew what would happen. I think that's a really common story, especially with alcohol, where we anticipate a great night and we just sort of never know what it's going to become. Yeah, very common.
So I started working, a lot in the music, and my boyfriend was in a band, and I didn't think I would have to tell the story when I started telling the story, but I'm going to tell the story because it's part of my story. My boyfriend was in a band, and we broke up, and I started dating his friend, which wasn't very nice of me. But that summer, and then across town, I was single, so I started dating someone else sort of across town. We started building a really great relationship, and all of a sudden, and this is no joke, they all got in the same band together. So
yeah. All three guys?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So my first 3 boyfriends, for lack of a better word, all got in the same band together. I was 20. That was my whole social structure. I was still dating the boyfriend for another year. So one wouldn't talk to me. The other one was still my friend. And then the other one was my boyfriend. And then they played. And again, this is my whole social structure. So it was super traumatic, drama-filled time. No wonder I drank so much, I've glossed over that for years, like, oh, it's no big deal. But no, that was a really, really big deal. And then
so were you drinking a lot during that time to quell the anxiety of every time seeing the band or getting together? Like what was so anxiety ridden about, I imagine, but go ahead.
I think it's all of it, part of it was just my lifestyle, part of it was I was still working in music, and then I got a job working at Nana, which was this really great alternative shoe store in Santa Monica that was like the greatest place to work ever during that time period. It was like, it was just the whole lifestyle. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I drank to, that was just my life. I was drinking and doing speedy drugs to feel better. And then when that all happened, I know in retrospect that I did a lot of, tried to like squash this, like, what's happening, with this whole thing. And then of course, the 2 boyfriends moved in together. They got a record deal and made a record.
Wow.
let me just fast forward to say I'm friends with all of them to this day. And a couple of years ago, we all, two of us, a handful of us, no, two of them and I sat down and had a really long conversation and did some healing over the whole thing. So,
good for you.
Anyway, they've all moved on. And then what was even worse is we all broke up. I'll just put it that way. And that's my entire social structure. I'm living in Hollywood by this time, and I'm going out and there's my ex-boyfriends and there's my like friends. And I'm just like, I went to New York for a visit, and I just was like, I think I need to move. And so I ended up leaving Los Angeles and moving to New York when I was 21.
Okay.
I know now, again, in retrospect, was to escape all that, like over, the chaos that I had created, but it was also just a circumstance. I don't think that was a direct result of my using. I just think it was part of my circumstances.
So keep going. Now you're living in New York City. You're single. You're still in the music industry. And what's going on with your addiction at this point?
Okay, so I moved to New York and I'm single, yes, and I got a job at a record company. That was my first record company. And I also got a job at a bar on the weekends because I needed the extra money. And what happened was, so I had been in Hollywood and by that time I had sort of stopped doing a lot of coke and crystal. I had stopped crystal a couple years before. And just sort of drank. So my addiction sort of went like that, right? I did some managing. By the time I moved, I was just about, drinking all the time. When I got to New York, I started working in this bar. I met some friends, and a friend of mine introduced me to a white powder that ended up being heroin. And since I was so used to snorting things in my nose, I figured, why not? Well, okay, I'll try it. I had seen people do it before when I was in LA, but it was this like gross black tar looking thing that you had to smoke or shoot. And I wasn't interested in doing either one of those things. So it was sort of a natural progression. When I found the powdered heroin, just to do it. And, my progression there was pretty like, okay, I did it. And then I didn't do it for a while. And then that progression was like, okay, I did it on Friday, Saturday. Then I did Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. And then, within a couple months, it was like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And then in another couple months, it was like, let's add Wednesday or let's add Thursday. So it took me a good 1.5 years, 2 years of dabbling to get to where I was doing that every day, but it did get there. It wasn't.
And you were always snorting it? You never injected?
Not until the last 3 months. Yeah. I had a great time during this time period, but I was in the music business, so it's a lifestyle that you sort of can get away with some things that you might not be able to get away with if you're in a normal, whatever, in a different profession, going to clubs every night. I got to see a ton of great bands. I met a ton of great people. And
I feel like the hiding of it, like you were saying, in that industry where if we're lawyers, so, Lisa Smith wrote the book Girl Walks Out of a Bar, and she was a lawyer. So she had to absolutely hide. I mean, her cocaine use was so, she was so ashamed of it. I mean, she had to hide it from almost everybody, where I imagine in your life, you were openly doing it with other people that were as well. Is that true?
I was openly drinking. I was not openly drugging at all. I kept especially when I got more into the heroin use, I definitely kept that to myself. There was only a handful of people that knew, and most people that were like, "Ooh, she's drinking a lot." I have a story. Well, with my drinking, we went out, we had a band in town one night, and I was like, I can drink you under the table. And I did. And then of course we're driving home. I'm in the limousine with my boss, and, I'm like, whoa, pull over. So like they pull over on 5th Street, and I have to like throw up all over 5th Street or whatever. Got some on my boss's shoes. It's been a joke with these guys forever. The next morning I go in and I'm, and my boss starts laughing. He's like, Hugh, you know, just to show you. And then I got called into the president's office, and I sit down and I'm thinking, he's going to fire me. Like he's going to fire me. And he's like, Ryndy, I don't know why he called me Ryndy. He's like, Ryndy, he's like, listen, he's like, we want our bands to look at you like we look at you, a smart, intelligent woman who can hold her life together. So I don't want to see that happen again. And I was like, okay. I never drank like that in his presence again.
Mm-hmm.
Those two same men later on pretty much saved my life. So they're also music business, you know, bad reputation for overlooking things, but when I asked for help, they helped me. So
excellent. Okay, so keep going. I'm really loving your story.
All right, so the progression happened.
So now you're snorting heroin every day. So how often would you be snorting heroin? Would you wake up in the morning and do it, or is this like, how does it look?
I would wake up in the morning and snort heroin, yeah, and then go to work and go to bars and do more. I did a little bit every day, yeah. Drinking in between, going to work, going to clubs, partying. I have a hard time telling some of these stories because I don't want to sound, you know, rock and roll and who I hung out with and everything was my life. And it's not, I'm not like, I don't want to downplay how crazy it was, but I also don't want to glamorize it. And then again, I also don't, you know, during this time period, the people I was hanging out with, I mean, I bought heroin for Kurt Cobain. I mean, and there were, you know, people that are now dead, like Shannon Hoon, I dated and he's now dead. Like I have all these stories of pretty famous musicians and stuff that I hung out with and stuff. And I like to downplay that because I don't want to sound like, ooh, I'm sorry, excuse me, you dropped some names over there. But it's also part of my life and I need to acknowledge it. That like, yeah, there was a point when Guns N' Roses were coming into town and my friend calls me who works there. It's like, meet us at the hotel. We're all going to hang out. By the way, no one in Guns N' Roses is doing heroin right now. So make sure there's no heroin around. So I like had to clean up to hang out with Guns N' Roses. Like that's funny to me.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, these are not normal stories of regular people. I get that.
But you know, that happened. And you know, the Soundgarden was opening for them every night. And so I got to see Chris Cornell every night, you know, and he's now gone. And so these things are really, you know, I think I'm sharing these partly to let you know that this was all going on, but it was also that internally, the key that's the most important thing to talk about right now is, yes, I had a, you know, on the outside, this fabulous hang out with rock stars lifestyle. I worked for a great record company. I had my life together on the outside, on the surface, but inside, I was becoming an empty person. I was becoming a shell of a person because I was numbing my emotions with heroin and alcohol. So the world started to turn really gray. Even though outside I had this fabulous, you know, young 20-something-year-old woman in the music industry, life, blah, blah, blah. But inside I was literally becoming empty. And at one point I was sort of like, okay, I guess I'm a junkie. And I just embraced it. And that's when I started shooting heroin because it got too expensive to snort it. My friend had progressed. She taught me how to do it. And I'm like, fine. Now, from the moment you put a needle in your arm, you can't fool yourself anymore. You can't say, I'm maintaining. You can't say, oh, this is just a phase. You're sticking a needle in your arm, you have a problem. And I knew it. And so from the moment I did that to the moment I quit, I knew I had a problem.
And was that the first time, because you talked about kind of whisperings prior, but was that the moment for you? Like, was that when you were like, I either I'm just a junkie and I'm going to die this way, or I'm going to have to get help at some point, but this is the reality of it? Like, was that the moment when that first time when you injected?
I think so. I think so. It was to the Temple of the Dog song too, which also is ironic because Chris Cornell is now dead, and they was written for Andy Wood, who OD'd. It's like my brain. I kind of went with it, and no, I think at the very beginning I liked it. It felt good. I mean, look, it feels good. Your body feels good. I mean, thank God I'm not around for the oxy years, but it feels good. Your body feels good. You know, I've now figured out solutions on how to make my body feel that way, warm lavender baths and other things, because, you know, that warmth, the feel good, it felt good. So I, you know, but then when it stopped sort of numbing, and stopped working, and then I would try to quit, and then by the time I really wanted to quit, I couldn't quit. And then you know, goes that cycle of wanting it with every ounce of your being, like every cell in your body goes, I want to quit, and then still finding yourself down, you know, copping dope on Avenue A. So, and you know what, I just want to say here too, like, again, my life on the outside was manageable. I put myself in really incredibly dangerous situations. I'm 5 foot tall. I'd be down in the Lower East Side, you know, 3 a.m. trying to find heroin. Like, this is not a joke. I got, you know, but I never got arrested or assaulted. I can't believe I've managed those whole years without having anything just horrible happen. So I was lucky on that thing. But again, I was miserable. So my consequences were different. Or not different. My consequences were internal.
And I think that honestly, that's everybody. That's everybody watching right now, everybody listening right now. That it doesn't matter if you've got the fancy rock and roll lifestyle on the outside, or if you're the fancy lawyer in Manhattan on the outside, or if you're the person working at McDonald's. Like, I think that the thing is that on the outside, we can all present to our circle of friends or to whoever is around us that things are okay. And we are self-medicating, and it's always about what's going on inside. It's always that way. So I think that's the commonality of all of this, no matter what it looks like on the outside. We are all the same to a certain extent on the inside. And we're all kind of trying to do the same thing with whatever drug of choice that we use. So yours towards the end was heroin and alcohol. So when was the rock bottom moment? What happened?
Yeah, I was going to say absolutely. And that's a good segue because I had a phone number for the detox center memorized. It was on the subway. It was like, when you're tired, you know, call us. And I literally memorized that 800 number for months before I actually called it. And I don't know necessarily why it was that night. I think, you know, that particular night I had tried for a couple months. My downfall, by the way, once I started shooting heroin, was really fast. Not downfall, but from like that to like, you need help, was 3 or 4 months. Like it went like, okay, this is a problem, which I'm very grateful for, actually. I'm very grateful that happened. I don't know what happened, but that night I picked up the phone and I dialed that number that I had memorized forever. And
were you high that night? Like, did you?
I was maintaining high. I wasn't, you know, I was comfortably numb, as Pink Floyd likes to put it. And I think it was one of those things where I was going to try and plan another weekend where I didn't use. Actually, I think that's what happened. I was like, okay, tomorrow I'm not going to use. And I was like, that's just not going to work anymore. Like, you've tried this 17 weekends in a row. I'm exaggerating, but you know, it's not going to work. Like, you've tried it already yourself.
Like that inside voice spoke to you in that moment.
Right here, I think. And I picked up the phone and, you know, dialed the number, and I heard this man picked up, you know, ACI, this is Albert. And I was like, I kind of heard myself in an out of body experience saying like, my name's Rynda, I need help. You know, I can't stop using. And Albert said, surrender, Rynda. And it's time for you to surrender, Rynda. And again, there was just that moment of clarity. Just was like, you know. And the next morning, I checked myself into the detox.
How old were you?
I was 24. Wait. I was 23 when I went into May, June, July, August, April, May. I was 23 when I checked myself into this detox. And talking about the am I inside, the emotional part, I took with me a cassette tape, Alice in Chains cassette tape that had a song called Am I Inside? And I listened to that over and over and over and over and over when I was in detox. So I was, really searching for myself when I was there.
So tell us about the experience of detox. Was it an outpatient, inpatient? What did it look like for you?
Oh, it was awful. I mean, the place was fine. I mean, you have to remember, this is 25 and a half to almost 26. Actually, it's almost 26 years ago to the day, because it was March or April. It was right before Easter when I checked myself into detox. So 26 years ago, it was a detox. It was a short stint. I got introduced to AA. I got introduced, they helped me get off the drugs using Benadryl, and it was awful. I kicked. The physical kick was awful. My brain was not thinking right. But once I had surrendered and made it sort of, okay, fine, I'm in, I went in full speed ahead. When I got out, I was so overwhelmed. I went to my first meeting and I walked in, and it was a big meeting, and I stood up as a newcomer, and I remember everybody clapping, and it was so, I've never told this story before. It was so overwhelming that I went and copped dope. Yeah. So I got high again after detox, and then I went and talked to my record company, my bosses, and they basically were like, listen, we want to ship you home. We want you to go back to LA. We want you to be with your family. And I was like, you can't fire me. And they're like, we can't, but we're going to. But here are the reasons. We're going to ship all your stuff home. We're going to keep you on insurance in case you have to go back to rehab. We support you. We love you, but you got to get out of New York. And they shipped me back to Orange County, Southern California. And then they put me I went back into detox, and then moved back to California. Those men saved my life. I was really mad at them when they did that to me.
Those were the same bosses, one of which was saying, you cannot behave this way. You can't drink that way again when you threw up on the other guy's shoes.
Yeah. But not only you can't drink this way, but we want to see you we want people to see you like what a great mentor, right? Yeah, his name's Phil Corderero. I will give him full credit for that.
How long was your first stint in detox? How many days? 7 days in detox. And was the prescription when you left 90 and 90? So they wanted you to go to 90 AA meetings in 90 days or something like that?
Probably.
Yeah. And the first one you go to, they applaud and they want to make you feel welcome. And as a newcomer, they want to welcome you in. And it's so overwhelming.
I can't handle this. I went straight to the drug dealer. And then I remember that I had no full club mode. I had told the drug dealer I used to buy drugs on the street, and the guy, there was a line to get drugs. This was New York in the early 90s, was not nice. And there was a line to get heroin, and there was the guy at the door, and the guy at the door recognized me, and he used to always let me, and he's like, there's like velvet rope for heroin. I would skip the line and go right in. It's just ridiculous.
Do you feel like you would have looked for any excuse? Them welcoming you at that meeting, and I'm not bashing AA in any way. Anyone that knows me knows that I fully support it. However we all get sober is awesome. I don't give a shit how anybody gets sober. But I'm wondering if, this idea that you were so overwhelmed by that experience, I'm sticking on it because I'm fascinated by it. But do you feel like you were looking for anything? Did you feel like when you were leaving detox that you were going to use again?
I don't know. This is so long ago for me. I'm sure I had hope, and I'm sure that it wasn't the meeting. I'm sure I would have found another reason. I'm sure I could have been like, I was home alone and I was sad, so I went, God. I mean, I'm sure it was anything. I wasn't done, I wasn't done. But what had happened is I had a head full of, the possibilities of recovery. And so I did move back home. My bosses did follow through on their promise. They shipped me back home. When I got home, a really good friend of mine who had been really bad alcoholic before I left was sober, and she came to visit me, and she started taking me to meetings. And that was really the turning point for me. So my sobriety date is July 10th, 1992.
Mm-hmm.
I just celebrated 25 years of recovery in July of this year.
Congratulations. That's huge. And so you used AA as your recovery pathway, for sure.
AA was absolutely AA and NA. I found the language in NA a little bit more palatable. AA and NA were my main pathway of recovery for at least the first 10 years of my sobriety. And I still go occasionally. I think it's important. I think it's got good community. A bunny just dropped. Sorry, a bunny just tried to come into my room. They were like, hi.
I want
I
bunnies
live in the woods.
I live in the penthouse of one of the highest high rises in my city. I do not see bunnies. I barely see birds. Birds are way down. So I wish I lived where I could see bunnies.
Anyway, so yeah, I started going to meetings, and what happened for me, which was so lucky, is I met a bunch of friends who were cool. They were in the music business, and they were bands. I met, Social Distortion. The singer in Social Distortion was sober, openly sober. I worked with this band called the Cadillac Tramps, and I ended up managing them, and they were all sober. And so I built this great community of sober musicians and artists and stuff like that. I didn't have to, I thought my life is over. I'm going to have to go to the Midwest. No offense to the Midwest. I'm going to have to go to suburbia and, be in bad meetings all the time. And what I found was a really great, vibrant community. And I do think, again, that was 1992. It was a little bit more rare to have young people in recovery. And young, fun, crazy people in recovery, but we were. I stayed in the music business. I did A&R my first 15 years of recovery, which means I was in clubs almost every night, watching bands. But I had a really great, strong support group, and went back to school for photography and sort of got my life back in a lot of ways. I still did struggle with depression, though.
So talk to us about, when did depression first rear its ugly head, as they say? When did you first experience a bout of depression? And then walk us back to where you were in that area of your life.
Well, so I got sober, and I was doing as much of the work, the suggested 12-step work as possible. I was still really depressed and confused. I knew enough intuitively that I knew that my brain needed to balance out and my body needed to balance out, because my doctor wanted to put me on medication right away. And I was like, let me work some steps first. I'm not suicidal. Let me work some steps first. Let me see if I can get some recovery. Now, I was not eating correctly or exercising or any of those things. So, so
you had never experienced depression when you were a kid, growing up, or when you were an early adult, in your late teens or early 20s? So this was the first time that you experienced depression?
Yeah, I don't recall. And in retrospect, again, I asked a lot of my family members, was I a happy kid? I don't recall ever having that type of depression. I think that either I had it and I didn't really know it, and then I used over it, or I didn't have it, and the chemicals that I use, the multiple chemicals that I use, alcohol and heroin and crystal methamphetamine and coke, for a total of 10 years, not a total. It might have changed my brain chemistry, and that's what happened. I'm not sure what it is. I don't think it really matters. I think for me, it was what's the solution? So I had about 3.5 or 2.5 years sober, and I was like, no, for the doctor, no meds. I want to try this, without that. And And then you know what happened? Kurt Cobain happened. Kurt Cobain was found dead, and something in that was like, life's too short. I don't want to feel depressed anymore. So I called my doctor and said, all right, let's put me on these meds. And I tell you something, the meds didn't work. They didn't work for a long time. You know, they put me on SSRIs, Prozac, serotonin uptake, you know, and I struggled. So let me just talk about it this way. On the outside, if you look at like my bio and my career, I stayed in the music business for a long time. I got to work with great people. I've had these amazing experiences. And on the outside, I've flourished. But on the inside, still, behind the scenes, I was still really manically struggling with depression. The kind of depression where I wouldn't want to get out of bed. And it would come and go. So at some point, you know, then they would put me on, I was on SSRIs, and then I started doing my own research. I started researching for alternative modalities of health really early in my recovery. So I have read so many books, my brain should explode, you know, on all the different modalities, everything, you know, food, nutrition, quantum physics, which I think is all part of it too. You know, all the different modalities. I had started doing all the research for it.
And because you were so dead set against on being put on medication, like, why was it that you were so against medication?
I think a handful of reasons. None of them, one of them is just, I think it's a systematic way for us to all be sort of drugged. Like I'm sort of against the idea. I mean, this is a different topic, but I'm sort of even against the medicated assistance treatment that they're offering now for long-term use. What I think happens in our pharmaceutical, you know, I think the pharmaceutical industrial complex, let's just go there. I was sort of against wanting to be like a sort of a drone and in that system. I think that things can be used for short periods of time. All the medications for getting off medications, including, you know, all of them. But most of them aren't given to people. It's not a care of take this for 3 months and then stop and let's see what else is going on. They just sign another prescription. So I was on medication for, I don't know, 20 years, you know, and because it's not given as none of the medications are given as a short-term solution. And that's my big issue and where I'm going now. And for me, I think I intuitively knew that in the beginning. It's like, no, I got off drugs because I didn't want to medicate. Even if my brain chemistry is wrong, if that's the model that you're saying that it is, why isn't this working? And then why, what can I do instead of a pharmaceutical to do this? Because there has to be natural alternatives. And that's just who I am as a person, to search those out. What happened was eventually I got on Wellbutrin, which did work for me. It worked miracles for me at first. And when I started researching what Wellbutrin did was different than the Prozacs and the other ones, because it worked on the dopamine and the norepinephrine. And I was like, light bulb, that is really what is wrong. Is my dopamine and norepinephrines off. Then I started the research on, well, what do I replace this with in a natural way? You know, exercise, of course, nutrition, and supplementation for the dopamine. And that's what happened.
That's fantastic. Well, oh my gosh, all of this work that you've now done, you've read all the books for us, you've done all of the guinea pigging yourself of trying all of the different things. I'm sure it's taken you, how long has it taken you to put together this, you know, the 5 different supplement line that you have?
Well, I got off medication, 2015 is when I started that process. And then I had this idea for this line up until about last year. And last year I had been telling all these different people about it. And finally someone was like, well, what do you need to actually start this? And I was like, well, I need some money. And they said, well, give me the business plan and why it works. And I was like, okay. So last June, I gave a couple people the business plan, and they backed me just enough to get this launched. So I started really working on the detailed formulas last July, right after my birthday, my sobriety birthday. I went to Paris for my 25-year sobriety birthday, and when I got back, I started working on it.
Good for you. That's a beautiful way to celebrate such an incredible milestone, 25 years without picking up. 25 years spent inside your body in that place that was so foreign to you for so long, where I know for so many of us, we get that feeling where we just don't know who we are inside and we just don't want to go there. And drugging and drinking is just a way to keep escaping ourselves. So congratulations on all of your success, on all the amazing things you're doing. Thank you for creating this line. Once again, tell people where they can find you and find all of this stuff. Where are the best places on social media and all the other places to find you?
Okay, well, if you want to just follow me or ask me any questions, my social, all of it is just at Rynda. See my necklace? Branding. Oh, no, I just like it. It's at Rynda, R-Y-N-D-A, mostly Instagram and Twitter. Facebook's for family. And VRY Everyday, it's VRY Everyday.com. And then I will be also launching supplementyourrecovery.com, which will be a resource guide.
Fantastic. Well, it's amazing. I have a couple more questions for you. I know obviously some of the answers to these. What are your favorite tools in recovery?
Food. No, a healthy lifestyle. It's a three-pronged stool, right? You got to have community. So if it's not a 12-step program, whatever it is, you have to have community and connection. So whatever that is for you, it has to be there. You have to have some sort of spiritual bond. It doesn't have to be religious in any way. It can be the community, but you have to have some sort of sense of a community and a higher power feeling, the spiritual aspect of recovery. So social, spiritual, and then you've got to deal with the biochemical issues that's going on with your body, and how you deal with that can be with just straight diet and nutrition, yoga, meditation. Those are all great tools. I'm now offering an additional one, which is supplements. So any of those tools that will work, all three of them.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a holistic approach. I really appreciate that. It speaks to me very strongly. Just speaking to that point you made about the needing a spiritual connection. And for some people, who are atheists or who just don't want to go there, or just don't have those beliefs. I remember somebody, I can't remember who it is. I'm sorry if whoever's watching, tell me if you remember who this was, but I think it was something like they said, if you don't want to believe in a God or a higher power or the universe or source, just believe in the waves of the ocean or in sunsets. Like, you don't have to believe, there doesn't have to be this esoteric, it doesn't have to be like that. It can be as simple as just, breathing, really. We can just kind of go there, and just to know that there is something else that's kind of guiding or supporting us, carrying us a little bit. I think I agree with you. I find that is such an important piece, because we can feel so alone. That's such a hallmark of addiction, is that we feel so alone. And if we can grab onto the notion that we are never alone, I just think that's really powerful. So I really like that part. My last question for you, I steal this one from Oprah. What do you know for sure?
What do I know for sure? It gets better.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for this time with me today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I can't wait to check out your supplement line. I definitely have interest in that, even though, as I mentioned before we started recording, I'm just not somebody who takes supplements, but definitely you've piqued my interest, and I think I'm on board. I want to give them a try, some of them for sure.
Great. Thank you. And you know what? Thank you very much. This has been, I just want to close up. This has been a really interesting conversation for me. And, I've been sober for a long time, and the whole idea of anonymity and all that, it was sort of ingrained. And it's been really part of the amazing process of launching this supplement line and getting into the, spreading the word for natural health, has also sort of brought me back to my own recovery, and for me to be able to share these stories. So these are among the first times that I've actually shared these stories to the public, and it feels really wonderful to do that. And so thank you for being of service, and thank you for letting me be of service.
Oh, I love that you said that because, we don't know each other very well other than, outside of, this realm. And when I got sober, 16 years ago, before Facebook, before blogs and communities, I was very much alone. I felt very much alone. I did not align with AA. I did not want to admit that I was an alcoholic. I didn't want to even consider being in a room with people who spoke that way. And so I talk about this a lot. I just sort of amputated that part of my life, myself. And it really wasn't until I was able to start speaking my truth, sharing my story, hearing other people's stories, and realizing that I wasn't alone. That was when my true recovery really started. So that's exactly why we're doing these conversations, just to be able to share that we are not alone, no matter who you are watching right now. If you feel like you're the only person that feels the way you do, you are not. Let's just put it out there. You are not alone, and you're not the only person that's felt the way you feel right now. And it does get better. As Rynda just said, what she knows for sure is it gets better. And I wholeheartedly agree. Once again, thank you so much, Rynda. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To get access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit sobrietystartshere.com.